Did you know the second most watched film on Netflix is an allegory for the climate crisis? Well, now you do, because in today's episode of Lights Climate Action, we're looking at Don't Look Up through a climate lens.
Don't Look Up is a film about two astronomers who find an asteroid hurling towards Earth, and they must go on a media tour of sorts to warn the world about it. But nobody really listens to them.
And if you listen to our intro episode, you'll know that I love The Hunger Games, so it's safe to say I'm a pretty big fan of seeing Jennifer Lawrence in a movie like this. So, without further ado, let's jump in with our hot takes. My hot take is that it's clear the cast took away nothing from what is an incredibly impactful film, because where is their climate action now? What happened next?
Yeah, you don't see Jennifer Lawrence or Ariana Grande do anything like this.
Ariana Grande did once use a GIF sticker design of mine on Snapchat, if that counts.
What was the sticker?
I think it was like, it might have been a vegan one, because I'm pretty sure she's vegan, or it was just like an eco-friendly. Actually, you know what it was? I think it was like a single-use, like don't use single-use kind of sticker.
I didn't know Snapchat had stickers on it.
Yeah, well, that's my claim to fame in relation to this movie. What's your hot take?
Well, so my hot take is that Adam McKay is one of the most interesting filmmakers out there at the moment. He is making films that should be boring, or maybe not boring, but difficult to talk about, and making them really funny and accessible, like The Big Short. Like, that shouldn't work, but in my opinion, it totally does.
This is where I admit that I think I've watched probably about 2 minutes of The Big Short and was like, I'm not sure this is for me, but maybe I should revisit.
You definitely should revisit. Also, Adam McKay is also known for producing Succession, which is an incredible show that you definitely should watch.
Once again, no spoilers for Succession. We tried to start rewatching so that I could see it for the first time, and we have now started Severance, so...
Yeah, I would like to have asked you, like, how do you think the characters would have fared in this film? The characters from Succession, but you don't know them well enough.
No, we need to actually do that. To give a bit of context to this film, as of January 2025, it is currently the second most watched film on Netflix with 171.4 million views. Adam McKay recently told The Guardian that he thinks that between 400 million and 500 million people watched it, which I find wild because this is one of the most watched films on Netflix, and yet who speaks about it? Like, people are always talking about shows and stuff like, you know, for example, like take the Squid Games. I feel like everyone spoke about that when it was at its height. And yet, where is that energy for the second most watched film on a major streaming platform?
Well, I think it's because Netflix can't sell it as like a hot product. It's a film for climate change. It's like a disaster film. There's not easy merch that can be sold about it. So they probably don't advertise it. But also, like, that's a problem with Netflix as a whole. They don't really promote their films, or if they do, they kind of disappear. They're like a movie of the week. Did you know, Tolly, that this film has got bad reviews critically?
I think I've seen some of that, like just in like researching for this episode. I think that's what kind of Adam McKay has been saying, that it's not had the best response. But once again, despite the fact so many people have watched it.
Yeah, but like the response from it is weird, because quite a lot of it's actually from media networks or media channels that you think would be positive towards a film that talks about climate change, but instead of like praising it for doing a job that most films don't do, it kind of says it doesn't go far enough, or like it talks about how the film, which is a spoiler but not really, is it sets an unrealistic deadline on climate change. Like, I was reading one article that was talking about that climate change doesn't have a deadline. Basically, it's a slow thing that is just eventually...
Yeah, the only real like timelines we have are we should really have reached net zero by 2030. Like, that's kind of one of the targets, or we have kind of like the numerical targets of the Paris Agreement and reaching 1.5. But I think that was something I kind of came away with with the film is because it's not with a comet and in this film, everyone was kind of in a wild panic. And obviously there are lots of us who are in a panic about the climate crisis, but because we don't have that kind of like, it's coming in 2 weeks or whatever, it's really tricky in that sense. Like, it's very difficult for people to grasp that slowness and the fact that it is just continuous. And even now, like every week now, there's some sort of climate impacts. Like there's another storm coming in the UK, there's the wildfires in LA happening, and it's just constant now. And it's hard to kind of, I don't know, you feel like you have to like continuously keep shouting like, this is climate change, like this is the comet.
This film is all about inaction. Like people are not in the film, they're not worried at all about the comet, or at least from what you see online, people are like still going around their day, which maybe is a fair thing. Maybe you would just continue your life as normal because you know you have the 6 months to live. But the way that the critics have spoken about this film as if it's such an easy thing to do, like a climate allegory, and be straight up like it is, and people think it didn't go far enough. But like, they should be praising the fact that a big budget movie like this is so openly talking about climate change. Well, it's such an allegory for climate change, and it got made. Like, never again will a film like this get made, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's also what Adam McKay has been saying. Like, it's impossible for him to do this now.
He was trying to adapt The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells, and I don't think he got anywhere with that because no one wanted to touch it. It's going to be a hard sell in a far-right world slipping into fascism, trying to convince a Hollywood studio to make a film that's depressing and about climate change.
Yeah, it's the sad state of the world. But I think this film gets a lot of stuff right. Like, even if it would be hard to make now, it did a really great job in its time.
Yeah, and I think the one key thing this film does really well is that it understands that comedy is like such a strong tool to communicate social issues and making them accessible for the masses. It's something that the climate movement has been doing recently, which is like embracing the kind of joy that we experience in the world and kind of making fun of the terror we face. Like, they're going into places that shouldn't be funny but are making it funny, and I'm glad that we're moving that way, and I'm glad this film is like straight up comedy.
I think it works especially when you're making jokes about the kind of like systemic issues that we're dealing with, rather than, you know, I hate when I see people make jokes about like heat waves and like, oh, it's so hot, and like those kind of like tasteless jokes where it's like, no, people are actually being impacted by that. Whereas this kind of comedy is like, let's make the people who are making the terrible decisions look stupid.
They don't joke, or they don't make jokes about Jennifer Lawrence's character, who is the one who's screaming like, what the fuck are you doing? There's a comet coming, act now sort of situation. They don't make fun of that, and I'm glad that they didn't make fun of this, the woman who was trying to point out, like, that's an easy low-hanging fruit that if you look on Twitter now, if you're a climate activist, you are getting destroyed.
Just don't go on Twitter, that's the lesson. Or should we say X? There's some really funny moments throughout this film. I think Jonah Hill's character is that kind of, like, he cuts through what could actually be quite a serious movie, like if you stripped away the humour. But also, his character is kind of true to life to how a lot of people genuinely are in relation to the climate, or at least like people in his sorts of position.
Yeah, I mean, he has that really funny bit when the prayer you expect is like, I love my friends, I love my family, but he does the whole speech about like, I love stuff, it's great, I love clothes, I love cars, and it's like such a funny thing because that is how, well, if you look on Instagram, that is what people love, that kind of stuff.
I said this to you whilst we were watching the film, it's like, there's actually some truth in it. It's funny, but there's also truth in the fact that at the end of the day, what we want to do is save the stuff that we do love and the stuff that we do love, you know, having in our lives. We can't have any of that nice stuff if we don't deal with the comet that is hurtling towards us.
And I mean, impressive that was improvised. Like, Jonah Hill came up with that, and you have to credit him. Now, another funny bit, also sad bit because it's totally true, is the comet is coming. Are you sure it's a comet?
It's a comet, right?
It's coming down to Earth, And instead of stopping it, they are going to mine it for its $32 trillion value. So, Tolly, are you for the jobs that the comet will provide?
Yeah, that for me is one of like the funniest moments, is when Kate's character goes back to her parents' house and opens the door, and it's just her mum and dad. Like, your dad and I are for the jobs that the comets will provide. It's just funny, isn't it? Because it's so stupid. It's stupid that in a moment of life or death, you're like, but the jobs.
Yeah, I think you'll find that a lot of things we say in this film are funny, but also sad because they are true. Like, this film is a satire film that doesn't feel like a satire film because it's basically just our reality now.
And I do wonder what it would be like to watch it. I don't know. Take someone who's not like us and to watch it. Like, does it feel like satire to some people? Like, does it feel really like absurd to some people? Whereas to us, it's like hilarious, but also like, oh.
If you were watching this now, fresh eyes, you don't know anything about the climate, would it make you want to act? Like, would you join a protest? Would you become an activist? Would this make you interested in the climate movement?
I think it would definitely get me thinking, which is why, once again, I'm like, how do you do a film as an actor? Which is so much about kind of like how the media has its power and influence, and then just not take that on board in any serious way.
I think one thing that this film does right, it takes the message of like people over profit quite seriously, because the whole film is profit over people. All the bad characters in the film put money over the people. And I think it's clear to me, at least, that is a clear message in the film, that we need to start respecting people over money. Speaking of stupid, Timothée Chalamet's character in this, not stupid, he's very spiritual. But I found his character's humor like very silly and just how I imagine I would act in that situation.
Is that so?
Well, I feel like if it's the end of the world and you see Jennifer Lawrence, you'd be like, do you want to make out? It's quite an obvious thing to do.
Okay, interesting that's your take.
But also, like, at the end of the film, he wants to spend the remaining couple of hours of his life with her because he's fallen in love with her.
Yeah, it actually makes me think of another end of the world film, Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, and that's the whole vibe of it, really, and it does move me to think of that. Did you also find it funny how Jennifer Lawrence, or should I say Kate, kept bringing up the bit where the guy in the White House get money off of them for the free snacks? I thought it was just really funny how there's this huge, great big disaster happening, but the like mundanity and the really silly small parts of life kept coming back for her.
I think if I was in that situation, why not sell to Kate?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, isn't it funny that she kept thinking about it?
Oh, I think about that all the time. That would just drive me crazy, I think.
Jake's clearly got money on the brain.
It's the film.
It's true.
Now, the funniest thing in this film, to me personally, is that Leonardo DiCaprio, who, in my opinion, looks like Leonard from The Big Bang Theory, starts going out with Kate Blanchett's character, the newsreader, who she refers to him as America's sexiest scientist. Now, I'm not a fan of Leonardo DiCaprio, nor do I think he's sexy at all. Like, I don't like him.
Hottest take.
It is a hot take. Many people like him. But like, in what world is this newscaster who's probably rich, famous, could have any man he want, going out with a scientist who got like a tiny bit of fame on their morning TV show? Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Look, she asked him to say we're all gonna die in a sexy voice, so clearly she's got a thing going on for that.
Is that a thing?
I don't know.
So, Tolly, since Kate Blanchett thought that Leo was the sexiest scientist in America, who do you think America's sexiest scientist is?
Oh my god, I don't know. This is a test of, one, how many scientists do I know the names of? I can think of climate-y people, but whether they're the sexiest, I don't know.
It's not the answer I want, come on.
No, I don't want to be put in this position.
I'm happy to move on if you don't want to answer the question.
If you were a scientist, you'd be the one I chose.
Thank you.
Speaking of people on the internet, another moment that was like, that's kind of a little bit too real, was when Kate became a meme. And It made me think of Clover Hogan, who founded Force of Nature, and how Elon Musk literally turned her into a meme over the top of Victoria Beckham's face. It's that meme. I think it's from like the David Beckham, like.
Oh, I didn't think I've seen that meme, but now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like the David Beckham or Victoria Beckham documentary or whatever, and she's talking about like how she's not privileged or something like that. I've never seen it, but Elon Musk put Clover Hogan's face on that meme and made out like she was a communist. She just did a TED talk about it, actually, the whole experience, which I'm excited to go and watch and listen to, because yeah, this does happen, and I think it probably happens more to women as well, at least just from like experience of being in the climate space. There's so many more women in it, and I think we know that is most likely because socially women are more likely to care about the climate and environmental issues, and so then you have these very rich, powerful men / the internet oligarchs, is that how you say it? Oligarchs, inspiring people to jump on it and send loads of hate to people to feed their message or whatever they're trying to say. And yeah, it was funny, and it's true to life, and I just had to highlight that moment because it really does happen. In this
film, Jennifer Lawrence kind of screams, as I said, like, at the monitors that we're all fucked and you need to act.
Yeah, that's what. Sorry, should have said that. That's what gets turned into a meme.
Everywhere on TV now, if you see a climate activist on TV, there is going to be that emotion that no one is listening because the media doesn't want to listen. It doesn't want to sell like a sad story. And I think it captures that really well in this film, because the media's, they're dummies. Like, my favorite real life media clip is that Talk TV clip. His name's Cameron, and he's talking about working as a carpenter, and the guy's like, you can't, I think he says like, you can go concrete. He's like, no you can't, and he's like, goodbye Cameron.
I think that honestly should be the approach for folks. Obviously, have any reaction like you want on TV. Like, if you, as I'm going to bring up in a second, like if you want to have a breakdown and cry about it, like that is your right to do so. But also I think just like playing them at their own game is very powerful as well. As I just said, we're starting to see more like climate aware people and scientists kind of start to break those kind of typical rules of what is expected of them on TV. For example, just recently, the meteorologist John Morales, he cried in light of Hurricane Milton in Florida in October of last year. And so many people were talking about it because it's so rare to see people who are, I guess, meant to be in like professional work mode, laying the facts out to people, to see them kind of show emotion and be human in the light of disasters is really powerful. And that got me thinking, like, in this movie, we see them start screaming and shouting, and Kate goes, we're all gonna die! When will we see people start screaming and shouting on TV in real life?
Yeah, like, when will we see Leonardo DiCaprio go on, like, a Sesame Street type place and scream at the TV, they're all fascists? Like, we tiptoe around stuff. People don't want to be offended, and they tiptoe around these, like, really serious topics that are so emotional that we need to show emotions.
Yeah, I mean, it happens in just like day-to-day life as well, and this showed it occasionally in the movie, like how we do tiptoe on behalf of other people. Like I know I do it with my family or like people close to us in our lives. You know, I've had moments where I've like, the news has been getting to me and I've walked out the room to hide myself crying. But actually, I think if we're going to take a lesson from this movie, it's to show those emotions more proudly, even if it is really difficult.
And even if you become a meme.
I do think people like Clover Hogan have really like taken it. I mean, she's just on a TED Talk. That's what we can all aspire to do, is become a meme, do a TED Talk.
Now, this film, as we've said, is funny, but also has a lot of meaningful moments that made you cry, actually.
I mean, that's not a surprise. I cry at like how many films do I cry
Every
at?
film.
There's a couple of moments that kind of come to mind. Actually, this was the second time of me watching this film, and a moment that kind of meant more to me this time around was when they all spotted the comet for the first time, and they kind of got out their cars and all started looking up. And I think sometimes I wish I could kind of have that sort of moment with people, but about the climate crisis. Like, I wish I could kind of get everyone I know to have a moment where you're like, look, this is it, this is what's happening. But then on the flip side, I'm also thinking moments like that do keep happening around the world. Whether it's fires or floods or hurricanes, I can point to the comet, I can point to it and be like, this is what's happening, but people aren't waking up. And yeah, it meant something to watch that.
For me, the ending is what, like, obviously it's meant to be the tearjerker of the film, but it really does get you, and it's like such a beautiful end line, which is, we really did have everything, didn't we? Which apparently was improvised by Leonardo DiCaprio. But like, it is so true. We have everything, and we are failing the planet.
I also liked how when Kate said, I'm grateful we tried as well. That's just nice. I think, especially for those of us who maybe like work on climate or work in a space which is trying to make the world a better place, whether that's climate or not. Sometimes it's nice to just remember that at the end of the day, we're all just trying. And again, that was another like really nice human moment that I think this film got right.
As you like may get from this, like, again, it is funny, but there are a lot of moments that are just so true to, I guess, our life as people who are
climate aware people.
Yeah, like watching, I when I first watched this, when it first came out, I don't think I was I didn't really like the film. I wasn't as moved as I was this time, but that's because now I have a much more...
Jake's become woke, guys.
Was never not woke, thank you. But I'm much more aware of how...
You've learnt a lot.
I've been learning for many years now.
I also really liked the moments, and it does this a couple of times throughout the film, where it cuts to clips of people kind of just loving life and existing as humans and having joy and having babies and being in love. And it's that kind of climate storytelling that I really want to see more of, and I hope at some point in this podcast we end up talking about again. It's kind of this, just making the topic of climate change less about the science and more about humanity and all the things that we love, and the fact that even in the darkest times where you have a comet heading for you, that there will always be a reason to find joy and to fight for this planet.
Joy is so important, and I don't think that we allow ourselves to experience as much joy as we should. Now, I experienced the opposite of joy when I was watching the Peter Isherwell character, basically the billionaire tech man, who is basically Elon Musk, especially now. Like in the film, the character kind of buys his way into the White House, and Elon Musk is doing that currently.
That character could be any of the people who are on the front row of Trump's inauguration.
The whole third act of the film is that they aren't successful with blowing up the asteroid because this Elon Musk type character tells them that we can mine the asteroid, the comet, for its worth and values. They would mine the thing for mobile phone parts.
It's like the minerals that we're currently having to take from the earth in order to make mobile phones and like batteries and stuff.
Once we've destroyed this world, I guess Elon Musk is going to Mars to destroy...
Or whatever that weird planet was where Meryl Streep gets eaten by a brontorok.
To the public eye, Elon Musk 4 years ago when the film came out wasn't as much as a Nazi as he is now. Maybe he watched this film and was like, I want to be this character.
I hope not.
Next, he's going to be put in charge of like Space Force, and he's gonna
Well, he literally does. He has SpaceX.
Oh, that's true.
This film is true to freaking life, and Adam McKay knows what he's doing in getting that message across.
Yeah, he's done a very smart thing, Adam McKay, in using like, none of these characters are too far-fetched. They're all so true to life.
Yeah, Adam McKay, hats off to you. He also runs Yellow Dot Studios, which is producing basically solely climate media and using that as a platform to just continuously talk about climate. And I think someone in his position of kind of notoriety and privilege, it's a pretty cool thing. We need more of it. And as I said, like, it's a shame that his cast aren't following through with it. Also quite interesting, we found that in an interview he didn't mention Leonardo DiCaprio as a kind of celebrity or actor who is doing good things for the climate.
Yeah, it was on Carbon Brief, and he was given an example of like Hollywood or celebrities using their platforms, and he was like, Mark Ruffalo's great, which he is. We like Mark Ruffalo. Go off, Mark. Why aren't you in this film, Mark Ruffalo? Also, come on our podcast, please. You are the end goal.
Adam McKay, Mark Ruffalo, you're both coming on this podcast in the future. I've said it here.
Yeah, and also Mark Ruffalo will show up down the line in another film that we very much like. Dystopia or utopia?
This is our segment of the podcast where we decide whether this is a dystopian film or a utopian film. I'm going dystopia because there is no comet coming to destroy us. There's just one very long, unfolding disaster that we need to get a handle on.
I'm also going dystopia. I wouldn't like to live in the world of Don't Look Up, but I guess we are. I do want to see, however, a remake in like 10 years' time and do a little genre switch and make it like a slow burn horror. I want to see Ari Aster's slow burn climate horror. Make that happen, please. For the first time ever, Tolly, how scorching are we talking?
Okay, so our rating system for Lights Climate Action is going to be using Fahrenheit because it kind of gives us like a nice 100 to work with.
Yeah, I think we'll limit it at 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, basically just 100%, but we're making it fun.
I'd give it 75 degrees. I think it's a funny, well-made film that doesn't deserve the hate it gets. I may have been one of the haters originally, but looking back at it, it's fun, it's true to life, and it's got a good message.
Huh, interesting. I'm actually going 87 degrees.
Whoa.
I really like this film. I think it's a good film, but I also, like, it gets bonus points or bonus degrees because it is so important and we need more films like it. It's pretty solid.
Adam McKay, if we were rich, we would finance your next film, but sadly, we are not.
Sadly, this podcast is yet to get a sponsor.
We say this as we're sat on a single desk together, not even in a studio. Thank you for listening to Lights Climate Action.
We will be back soon with another new episode, but before then, you can find us on Instagram and Blue Sky. Our usernames are in the description to stay updated and support the podcast.
And if you made it this far into the credits, thanks for sticking with us and listening.
If you want to let us know who your sexiest scientist is, then find those usernames we just mentioned and let us know either by tagging us or leaving a comment on one of our posts. Because it would be quite fun to find out who you think is the sexiest scientist.
Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe.
Bye!
Bye!